What's up, fellas? Good to see everybody back for another episode of The Blind Pig, courtesy of BGObsession.com.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Yeah, happy Halloween. Before we jump into this cesspool, we'll go ahead with the quick intros. Top left is Chris. On the board, he hails as Chris. Bottom left is Mark. You can find him as Ohm. Bottom right is John. He hails as Boone. Top right is Paul, better known as Canadian Hog. And my name's Derek. You can catch me at Silent Threat. So please feel free to join the board, mix it up, leave comments, have fun, all that good stuff that we talked about at the beginning of every podcast. So, I guess the question that's getting kicked around now is, did this game change your feelings on Sam Howell? I guess that's the easiest place to start, as it's probably the most impactful. I succeed the floor.
To change my feelings on Sam Howell, no, it did not. I think Sam Howell, after the Giants, was the same Sam Howell we saw before the Giants, capable of great things, capable also of being a little bit of deer in the headlights from time to time when faced with really good creative defense and not getting, in my view, enough help from the game plan. I don't think our scheme helped him out particularly. But all the things that we love about him going into the game, that his spirit and that even keel and all that's still there. And the more I see of it, the more I'm coming to take it for granted that that's just who he is. And if he continues to cut down on mistakes and maybe gets a little bit of a better line in front of him and more consistent coaching, that I think he's still got a lot of potential. I'm still waiting to see, but I'm still encouraged.
Paul, you haven't been on in a couple of weeks. I'm curious what your feeling is on Sam.
Yeah, no, my view of him has not changed. One of the things that I always try to pay attention to as a fan, just observing from television, is how young players respond to adversity. And this is not the first time that Sam Howell will have faced adversity this season. If we all recall, he had an awful performance against the Bills early in the season. He had a not so great performance against the Giants in New York. And in both those instances, we saw him rebound. He's come off a series of 3 straight games prior to this New York one where he put in really, really solid performances. So have we seen Sam Howell show the ability to rebound this season as a young player? Yes, we have. Do I expect that he will rebound following, a subpar performance this past week? Based on what he's done this season, he's given me every indication to believe that will come to fruition. So I'm not concerned. Young players have bad games, and it's part of the growth process. The important thing is that this doesn't become a pattern, and we haven't seen it become a pattern quite yet. And hopefully it doesn't go down that road.
I'm still enthusiastic. What is this? He's played 12 games now in his career. I am interested to see how he goes the rest of the way, because I think he's got some hurdles in front of him that are a little tougher than the hurdles he has behind him. The Giants, and maybe Wink Martindale in particular, seem to have his number, but hell, the Giants have our number. So I'm not sure how much to read into that. As much as as well as he played against Philadelphia, which is a better team, Giants are not a better team, but they still did rattle him a little bit in both games, I think. So I'm enthusiastic. I don't think the die is fully cast yet, that I'm not going to say I'm ready for him to go the next 5-10 years. But if he finishes out the string along the same lines as what he's done already, I'm certainly ready to go into next season with him.
So this is what I wrote on Twitter, which probably the most retweeted tweet I've ever had. This is a fair assessment of how great arm, mobile and athletic, tough as nails, oozes leadership and accountability, young and mistake prone, work in progress, highly coachable. And then I think somebody else on the board chimed in, unflappable. And that's pretty much describes the quarterback we've been trying to find for 20 years. And I just want to say, the last thing I'll say is Paul mentioned that young quarterbacks are going to have games like that. Veteran quarterbacks have games like that. I've seen Aaron Rodgers have games like that. I've seen Patrick Mahomes have games like that. That doesn't make him Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes. But I think we have this myth that gets perpetuated a lot that like rookie quarterbacks are the ones or quarterbacks that aren't going to make it or maybe are still trying to be assessed in terms of whether they can be starters are the ones that throw 2 and 3 picks in a game. But it's just not true. Every weekend there's a veteran quarterback that throws pick, has a bad game. So I'm not minimizing it because he's had a couple of them, but it's not some earth-shattering thing, regardless of whether we think he's the franchise quarterback or we don't think that. You're going to have games like that.
Yeah, Sunday didn't change my mind on Sam Howell because my mind wasn't made up yet on Sam Howell. I think there's a lot of recency bias in our fan base that a lot of people don't really truly, as desperate as we have been for a quarterback.
34.
If desperate as we have been for a quarterback, you would think patience would be something that would be relatively easy to come by with this fan base. I've heard multiple people on sports talk radio and on Twitter saying Sam is who he is. We have no fucking idea who Sam is yet. We're 12 games into this kid's career. We don't know who he is or what he is. What we do know is that he's shown us more than any quarterback that's worn our jersey since, statistically, Joe Theismann. Am I saying he's Joey T? No, I'm not. Is he going to be a better quarterback than Cousins? Yet to be determined. Is he even going to be better than Griffin? I don't know that. But here's what I do know is that we've seen more out of this kid than we've seen from a lot of NFL quarterbacks, including the 10 rookies that started for NFL quarterbacks this season. This idea that you can know what a quarterback is in 11 games and then think he's something different after his 12th, I can't get on board with. I'm not saying sign him to a 10-year deal. I'm not saying pay him starter money, but I also don't think we need to close the door yet. And I don't know that we're going to have that answer by the end of this season. So this new general manager is probably going to have an interesting conversation to be had. But to his favor, and maybe this is a segue into the next conversation, he might have the opportunity. They might have the opportunity to draft somebody high and still have Howell, and let them battle it. And if you come out with one of the two starters, then you come out with one of the two as your starter, and if that's how they attack it. But it was a bad game. I think we can all agree that this is one in the. We would classify this as one of his downs. As a quarterback has ups and downs. But I also don't think he was the reason we lost the game completely.
Nope. You know why we lost the game, right? In one word.
Turnovers.
I tried to look up in the history of the NFL if any team has ever won a game when their turnover differential was -6. And I think it came up with one game in the history of the NFL, and it was just kind of a fluky thing. I did a little bit of research on this, and I'll post it on the thread when we get this thing posted tomorrow. But and we've talked about turnover differential before, but even teams that win the turnover battle in a game by 1 win 70% of the games, was one of the stats I saw. And it just goes up. By the time you get to like -3, it's 90-something%. You're just not going to win games when you get crushed in the turnover battle. It's bad enough that we turned it over 6 times. The flip side is that our defense, which is quite arguably the worst unit in the NFL, if not, it's a pretty close tie. We're on the negative Mount Rushmore, produced none. So maybe 1 or 2 turnovers by the D gives us the ball in positive field position once in a while, and Sam doesn't have to go 80-90 yards every time we get the ball. So yeah, he had a bad game. He's on a bad team with a horrible defense, and the kid's holding his head up and fighting his guts out. And I mean,
Look Look up the stats on how many times a team has sacked a quarterback 9 times in a game and not had any of those result in turnover.
In the first half.
That's just bad luck. I mean, really, to an extent. That's a lot of weird things in that game, man, which we can talk about. Several records that have not occurred since 1932 in Washington that we shattered, and yet we still lost the game. Weird game.
I don't know if this was a record, but I know I'm pretty sure, because I was counting, that we had exactly 0 sacks in the fourth quarter. When games are won and lost, we did nothing.
Well, we had 5 sacks in the first quarter. That was one of the franchise records. And the other one that I saw was we held the Giants to 0 yards rushing in a half. We've never held a team to 0 yards rushing ever since 1932, which pretty incredible. So it wasn't all bad. I mean, it wasn't one of those games where it's just a weird game.
So here's this weird thing is it's a 6 turnover game, and we have the ball at midfield with a minute left and a chance to go win the game. I mean, what does that say about us? Or maybe the Giants really aren't very good, that they were still almost losing, hanging on by their fingernails to win a game that it was a bizarre game. I'll go with that.
And it wasn't even like, I don't want to minimize the interception, but it's not even like Sam made a bad decision on where he was throwing. He was legitimately trying to throw the ball away, and it just came out weak. He wasn't trying to force it. He wasn't trying to press something that he shouldn't be pressing. I mean, it was just one of those fluky, funky arm angles, I guess, that it just came out weak and made it that it was a playable ball. I mean, so who knows where that game goes, but
I got to share something I saw on Twitter, because this would be another record. It was and I don't know who said it, so I apologize if you're listening. He said it was the first time in NFL history a player had scored 3 touchdowns on a single carry. He was referring to Sam Howell going, making that rush into the end zone, where he probably did cross the line 3 times before they finally blew the whistle.
And I bet you I'm not the only one who commented when they were mixing it up on the sidelines after that play. I'm glad I said in my frustration at that point, well, at least we're showing some fight, because there was Samuels in there mixing it up.
So that is an interesting question, because I know we were in the chat on Sunday, and I was intrigued, and I don't know that I was excited, but I was somewhat happy to see that reaction. And did I want Curtis Samuel to get ejected? No. Was it warranted given his actions? Yeah. But I know, John, you and I were kind of going back and forth on this subject about how you thought it was unnecessary, and I'm like, well, Jesus, at least finally we're seeing some fight. You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay. You can't take a cheap shot at my quarterback, and I want the team almost at the risk of a penalty to react that way.
Yeah,
so, John,
I think both of those things can be true at the same time, Derek. It's not like I totally get what your point was, is that it's, either they've got their quarterbacks back, and maybe that kind of stuff means more in the long run than whether we pulled out a win against another terrible team, in the long run. I just thought it's just one of those things where it's like, they're going to call it. We would have gotten the personal foul call in a game where we need every break we can get. And I didn't think it was the smartest thing to do to carry it that far, because, but again, I mean, I'm not going to die on that hill. In the moment, they're pissed off because their quarterback took a cheap shot. So obviously I get the sentiment there.
I wonder if it would have felt any different if the team had gone into that game 7-4 and was fighting for playoff position, and the game meant a lot more in the win column. Am I the only one? But I was pretty sure at 14-3 the game was over. It didn't feel right. It felt like Giants, Redskins again, and I really. It's hard to say this because I know younger fans and fans who haven't been through it for 30 years, like us older types have, that we've known for a while this season wasn't going to end up being a championship type. We were not going to be playing late in January. So I'm more interested in how players play and how they respond to being in this weird situation of being a dead team walking. They all know the change is coming, right? What are they playing for? That's kind of what I'm watching for, is who's out there throwing it around, putting stuff on film, and looks like they might want to be here next year.
So speaking of which, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I made a comment in one of our threads that one of the things that concerned me about this past week was I questioned where the desperation was in this team. We trailed the entire game. We've heard Del Rio and even Rivera to an extent talk about, how it was imperative that this team starts fast, whether defensively or as a team on the whole. That's one of the goals. In the process of trailing from start to finish against New York, I personally didn't see the team really playing with any sort of desperation. I don't want to say that they were lifeless, but at the very least we've had other horrible games this year. At the very least against Chicago, we played an awful first half, but at the beginning of the second half, there was a little bit of a pushback. I personally didn't really see anybody on our team, offensively or defensively, decide that they were basically tired of what was going on and that they were going to do something about it. And for me as a fan, that frustrates me beyond belief, given the amount of dedication and passion that I have towards the team. I didn't really see somebody stepping up, making that huge impact play. Instead we were just okay with being beaten down to the lowly Giants again. I don't know if I'm off base in saying that, but I got the sense that nobody really cared about stepping up and showing a sense of desperation. I don't know. That's just
somebody. I saw
Yeah,
Sam Howell slam his forehead into 3 Giant defenders at a goal line trying to score a touchdown.
yeah.
I
know,
I'll
thought
give you that.
Brian Robinson played his ass off, both as a receiver and running the ball. And David Mayo was just pounding people. So I did not feel that way, Paul. I felt like I don't think you can underestimate how badly those turnovers deflate them. They're driving the ball all over the field. And then, that's a lot of turnovers. Like Mark said, to even be, it should be like 45-3 if you have 6 turnovers. It's, if it weren't the Giants, and I would even say if we had turned the ball over 3 times, not 6, we probably win that game walking away.
Or if we had actually created a turnover or 2 and gotten the ball back for our offense down close.
But I get why you feel that way. And it seems
Paul,
like,
to your point, it goes, I think we all agree that it goes well beyond just this week. And I think we're maybe, and I'm just speculating here, maybe where the disappointment truly is, Paul, and I agree with you, is defensively. When are we going to see someone defensively stand up and change the game?
Well, and Mark said it earlier, despite the fact that we had 6 turnovers in the game, literally 1 defensive turnover would have probably been enough to beat New York. We had an opportunity at the end of the game to take a lead despite being -6 in the turnover department. So I guess that's what I'm saying, right? Like we didn't need much. Like we literally needed someone on that defense, like you're saying, Derek, to step up and make a play. And it never happened the entire day. And it's so deflating.
To me, the most crushing turnover by far was Pringle's fumble on the opening kickoff of the second half. Because I thought maybe, they're going to come out after halftime, going to see if we can get something going, maybe made an adjustment here or there. And I think, at least for me watching the game, all the air in my balloon was just immediately dissipated when he fumbled that kickoff return.
Funny thing about turnovers, right, is that when you look at the game and you watch the players, they're fighting for extra yards, right? And you like the effort there, but turnovers, they're kind of fluky generally, but good teams seem to create them and bad teams seem to give them up. And I don't know if that's on individual players. And Paul, what you were saying about the fight, I keep going back to I think individual players, most of them are playing their asses off. I think the team is so badly coached and that they just don't play as units. And that's where you see real fire. And when a defense takes over a game and changes it, sometimes it's one guy making a great play, but as often as not, it's that they just shut a team down. And we just don't seem to have that. And we haven't really had it much all year, that sense that, particularly on defense, that they're just going to take over a game and make sure, give the offense a chance, support the team. I think these guys got to 7 more weeks now of being in a locker room that knows its coaching is substandard and isn't going to be here. And they're going to have to play their asses off and do the best they can. That's a tough spot.
The defensive secondary just doesn't seem to have any feel or understanding or comfort in whatever's being called. I actually thought that the defensive line, particularly in the first half, played well. But you give up 8 explosive plays of 20 yards or more from the defensive backs. They don't seem to be communicating. They don't seem to, be squared up with what they're supposed to be doing, and it just looks like a foobar.
So what do we think that is? Is that on players not doing their jobs, or is it more on the fact that they have not been coached properly in the system to try to run? And I don't have an answer to that. I'm asking the question.
Saquon's touchdown, he was man-to-man with Jamin Davis, and he was isolated on the outside with no safety help. The safety was late getting over. Was the safety supposed to be there? Is it over-the-top coverage? Or was the safety responding to, was he in his own assignment and he broke off because he saw what was happening? I can't blame the defensive backs for that. That's a schematic issue. First off, they literally had one guy on the field that you had to fear. One guy. And that guy should have 3 people on him. You should let whoever you want run free and say, if you beat me, you beat me. I'm not letting Saquon Barkley beat me because I'm not asking Jamin Davis to cover him one-on-one. I mean, schematically, that's my argument for scheme. That's not somebody making a play. That's somebody who's not capable of making the play being asked to make it.
You heard me talking about it, and I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm patting myself on the back, but from the very first preseason game, you all remember I was saying I don't like what I'm seeing from the defense. There are gaps. People aren't filling their holes. They don't look like they're communicating. And I said it all through preseason, and we took a break in the Cardinals game at the start because they seemed to do okay, but really it's been the same story all year. This defense never was all operating on the same page, which is either it's the wrong players trying to fit the right scheme, or it's the wrong scheme for the players. And I'm going with, I'm still so down on Del Rio. I think he's been mailing it in. I really do.
I looked into initially that, what impact did losing Chris Harris have? And I learned today, which I didn't know, that Brett Vesselmeyer, who's the DB's coach now, has never coached above the high school level until now. But then I had to think about it and realize we had the same problem last year, and we had the same problem the year before that. So maybe it's not Chris Harris. But it's coaching in my mind.
Yeah, same. So what do you do for the rest of a season that is clearly not going anywhere other than playing for pride now? That's a tough spot for these guys to be in. And that to me is going to be what I'm watching the rest of the way. And I will watch, because now I'm back to sort of like it was in preseason. I'm looking at individual players and how they're acting and performing within the scheme. And if it looks like they're still out there trying to be professionals and do their jobs as best they can.
Well, the good part is that these players, no matter who's here next year, they want to have a job either here or somewhere else next year. So they need to protect their own performance and not get dragged down by the minutia of the situation.
I wanted to bring up a quote from Sam Howell in his post-game presser. And I don't know why no one else is talking about this, because to me it was kind of like, I can't believe he just said that publicly.
About Rivera?
And yes. And he was asked, now this is a question about Ron Rivera. It was basically kind of what Mark was alluding to a little while ago about, and Chris, about these players. How do they continue playing, hard when they've got a coaching staff that they know, like, they may all be gone in, 2 months, hell, Friday, depending on how things go. And this is what Sam Howell said about the question about Ron Rivera. He said, everybody knows it's a business, and if you aren't doing your job, things will happen. And I just kind of like, I was in my car and I just went, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
He just said that. And it was directly, it wasn't about like him or somebody else or the team. It
He
was
was asked about his coach getting
it
fired.
was about Ron Rivera getting fired, possibly. So that, I don't know. I wondered to myself, I wonder what Rivera thinks when he hears his quarterback say that.
He's gonna think about that when he gets a couple extra days off coming up soon. But
Oh my God. So I had this thought in the last couple of days, and it's probably completely off the wall and dumb, but I'm going to put it out there just in case, because I think there might be something to it. I'm almost getting the sense, and I don't know where this came from, okay, that Josh Harris and Ron Rivera may well have sat down in preseason, and Josh made it very clear. Look, I don't think I'm going to be bringing you back. I need someone to coach this team this year. And will you stay? Will you be my head coach? I mean, I don't know how a conversation like that would go, but it would explain a lot about the way this thing is played out, with Ron seeming so disengaged and, taking his days off and sort of, anyway, I just want to put that out there. We may hear about down the road at some point that this was all sort of an understanding that this was a caretaker season and Ron was the man for the job because he's here. He's getting $8 million. He's going to get $8 million next year to walk away. Boom, there it is.
I wondered if the conversation wasn't more like, get this team to the playoffs this season and we'll talk after the season. You don't get them to the playoffs, there are going to be changes coming. I wonder if it was.
Maybe Ron's behavior doesn't fit very well with that, right? You think maybe Matt Canada just got let go from a 6-4 team that's in a big playoff hunt for and the Bills let a guy go. We're not doing anything. Ron's not doing anything. I think
Well, to your point, not just us doing anything. Ron's not coaching he hasn't been coaching desperate all season.
Yeah, that makes the assumption that he's capable of coaching well.
Well, that's true. But
I think
I'm
the
not
reason I
saying
think
I'm saying desperate. Okay, the way I look at it is and maybe I'm off base here, but if when we score that touchdown against Philly with 0 time on the clock, if that conversation was had that we make the playoffs or you're gone, I think he goes for 2 there. Same thing against Seattle. Same thing against when we're playing the Bears. I mean, you're coming on Thursday night and they come out that unprepared. I mean, there's no desperation there. We haven't seen desperation all season.
He doesn't look like a guy who's coaching for his job.
Agreed.
He just doesn't. And I was trying to figure out.
I wonder if anybody's asked him if he realized he'd been eliminated from the playoffs yet.
6 in a row, we don't go.
I think we might not go with 6 either, but that's just me.
So there's a blurb on that. We talk about a crazy game and what turnovers do. The Commanders outgained the Giants in total net yards, 400 to 292, gained 28 first downs to the Giants 13, enjoyed a 10-minute advantage in time of possession, ran 77 offensive plays to 54, and outgained the Giants both in net and rushing yards. It's just, you
forgot 9 sacks.
And 9 sacks. Yeah.
9 sacks. I wonder if
9 times.
I wonder if a team has ever lost that sacked the quarterback 9 times. I'll bet you they haven't. I'll bet you it's never happened.
I would have to agree with you.
And again, all in the first 3 quarters, right? Most in the first half.
Here's the factor that we're not talking about. And the real reason we lost the game is because we were wearing black. I'm just going to put it out there.
What's our record in black? I meant to look it up.
1-4.
1-3 or 1-4.
1-4.
About as good as it is in white and burgundy.
Well, that's
And at
fair.
home.
That's
And
fair.
at home.
And we were on the brink of losing the one game that we won in the black uniforms. That was that game against Atlanta where they were down near the goal line. We got that tip pass and Kendall Fuller intercepted in the end zone. But
When's
we
the
were
last
staring-
time we weren't on the brink of losing a game we won? I mean, it seems like The only games we win, we're on the brink of losing, and we just don't lose.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like we're going a little negative. I don't know.
So did anyone else, this is something I noticed watching, because again, Wink Martindale took Eric Bieniemy behind the woodshed in my estimation, and it wasn't all with all the crazy extra blitzers. They sat back in 4 and threw coverages that confused us too, and we seemed to have no answers. But on the other side of the ball, did anyone else notice how they protected their quarterback from after the 9 sacks and when things stopped happening? I have never seen a quarterback drop as deep as Tommy DeVito did, maybe 3 or 4 or 5, even more times. I mean, he wasn't dropping back 7, he was dropping back 10, maybe 12, and staying ahead of the rush, and then taking advantage of the big open spaces in the middle of our secondary. So they adjusted and did quick stuff, and they adjusted and put Tommy. I'm going to have to do a count on that. But there were several times I noticed I have never seen a quarterback drop that deep and look like it was planned. It wasn't just like to avoid a rush. They adjusted in game on both sides of the ball completely more effectively than we did.
Well, and to your point, I believe there were a couple plays I pointed out in chat that Hal had 4 or 5 seconds back there to throw the ball. So you're right. It wasn't all blitzes. It wasn't all exotic looks. It was well beyond that. Maybe it was exotic coverage looks, but not on the line of scrimmage. Everybody was talking, they're going to blitz, they're going to blitz, they're going to blitz. I did say, and one positive, I loved seeing a screen against a blitz, and lo and behold, there was a 19-yard gain on it. I think we all were ready to pop champagne bottles and be in the chat room when it happened because we all got so excited about it.
And we ran the ball, so there's that. Yeah, just what do we think about Bieniemy? We took the pulse on Sam Howell. How are you guys feeling about EB?
I think I think EB is. I don't think EB's done enough to earn a head coaching job yet, but that doesn't mean that it's still not possible. I think as a play caller, he tends to be a little rigid and stubborn, and have tendencies of the things that drove us nuts over the last 3 years with Scott Turner, where it seems like something's going to work and it starts working and then we get away from it. I would like to see a little more flexibility from him, and an adaptability from him, and maybe that comes in time as a play caller, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know that the book's closed on him yet, but I'm not seeing anything that I haven't seen enough to make me believe that letting him walk would be like letting McVay out of the building, or one of those prodigal offensive forward thinking minds. I haven't seen that enough yet. Sam Howell's leading the league in yards, but he's also leading the league in attempts and completions. So is it a little padded stat? Yes. Is it a legitimate stat? Yes. Offensively, he's moving the ball well enough.
I mean, we're the 10th ranked passing office in the NFL.
Right.
I mean,
so
obviously you're going to throw a lot if you want to be the 10th ranked passing.
Right. So I don't know that he's locked up any real. I don't think he's locked anything up one way or the other. I think it's still a question mark.
I mean, I think he's just in the same boat Hal is. That game, we move the ball up and down the field at will. You take away and again, it's a big thing to say, take away the 6 turnovers. But I mean, that's a ridiculous. Like we talked about earlier, the fact that we were still in the game up until the closing minutes with 6 turnovers, that indicates that you're doing some pretty good things on offense. So it didn't change my mind at all. I mean, at some level, the coaches and the coordinators are responsible for turnovers in the grand scheme, I guess, in some kind of ethereal way, but I don't know that in a game you can really pin that on them. That's more of an individual player thing. So I thought he was fine in that game. It didn't change anything for me.
For me, I think that Bieniemy and Hal are tight at the hip. So it's hard for me to separate the two of them in a discussion. I will say that I don't believe he had, maybe just Andrew Wiley, but I'm not sure how much say he's had over the offensive line. So they're both handicapped to a bit. As far as how I feel about him, no different than I did going into the game, but I think on the last pod, I said one thing I was going to be looking for was growth and development of both Hal and Bieniemy from the last Giants game, and I didn't really see any.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I think we put up 7 points in the last Giants game, and I don't think we turned the ball over 6 times.
Right.
So I'm going to
to that point-
segue. Go ahead, Derek.
To that point, I think we can honestly say offensively we did more this game than we did against them a couple weeks ago. Now, you got to hold on to the damn ball. Sam Howell's first interception was a bad one. The pick 6 was a bad one. But at the same time, I can't hold the offense responsible. To your point, Chris, you said probably the most deflating play of the entire game was a fumble on special teams. It had nothing to do with the offense. If the offense gets on the field on that drive, how much different do things end up just in that drive? Because that was just completely deflating coming out of halftime to then let that happen. And it was a good return. To make things even worse, it was a good return. It's not like he did it at the 12 after making a stupid decision to run it out. He had broken free and he was running up the sideline, and we were going to have decent field position up around, I want to say he had crossed the 30, if I'm remembering correctly, and he was getting up near the 35. So I got to say that we did better against the Giants this game than we did last game. But to that point, we still lost the game against a team that we probably should have blown out.
So I'm going to segue us to this tomorrow's game. And this is the way I'm going to do it. Sam Howell has he had 2 bad games in a row this season? I don't think he has. He's followed his worst games with really good performances, and that's been one of the things that Bieniemy's talked about, is that he learns from his mistakes, etc. So we'll see if he can do it again, but let's hope that's the case so that we can maybe feel a little bit better about Sam out of the Dallas game.
Then I want to theoretically throw it out there. Let's say he has a bad game. Are we making, I don't want to say excuses, but are we looking at it a little differently, given the fact that he's coming off a bad game? It's been a short week. They've had no practice. They're going into Dallas. We're going to be playing a team that's hot right now. Chances are their pass rush is going to be pretty nasty. I mean, do you really hold that against? Would you hold it against him?
No, but I'm talking about more decision making, like not putting up any balloon balls that shouldn't be thrown at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ones where he says, I wish I could have that one back. I'm not talking about the result. I'm not even talking about yards and touchdowns. I'm just saying that he, within the context of what he's facing, that he makes good decisions and plays as well as you could expect. That's
that's kind of where I am. I'm going Maplethorpe. I'll know a bad one when I see it. If he stands in, if he plays hard, makes the throws that are there, but again, we get abused schematically, or our offensive line really never gives them a chance to throw. I'm not going to put that on Sam. We'll talk next week on how he did. What I do want to see from him is that he continues to be Sam Howell, that he doesn't lose his cool, that he doesn't get hurt, God forbid, because I still want to see him play the rest of the year. But be Sam Howell, do the things you're capable of, play within the system, and hope that Eric comes up with something that gives them a competitive chance. And hold on to the damn ball.
When you ask me how, my next question is, how bad? When you ask me bad, if he's bad, how bad? If he throws 3 or 4 interceptions on passes he shouldn't throw, yeah, I'll take my foot off the throttle. But I still don't think it's going to define what he's going to end up being. But it'd be disappointing to see.
At the end of the day, when you stand back and look at it all, I think it's fair to say that he has exceeded every single fan's expectations for what he was going to accomplish this year. So 2 bad games in a row, I don't necessarily think it should, change the plan or the course of action moving forward. I would still feel fairly confident that he can be a quarterback that we go into next season continuing to develop and continuing to work with. Again, he has exceeded my expectations in terms of what I felt he could accomplish this year. So, a couple bad performances in a row certainly shouldn't be a reason to hold his feet over the fire, so to speak, for.
Yeah, I know that here we are in November, right? And the competitive part of the season is over, and we're already talking about next year and individual players instead of the game itself. This could have been such a huge moment in the new first year of the new ownership. And here if they manage to squeak out Seattle and beat the Giants, we're what is it? We would have been 6-5 heading into this game. We lost another opportunity to play competitive football, but at this point now, I mean, they're going down to play Dallas, and Dallas is one of the 3 or 4 hottest teams in the NFL in their house, in their home field advantage at whatever that silly stadium is called now. But this is setting up exactly opposite of what we do, right? We're coming in there with the worst scoring defense in the NFL, the 30th ranked yards defense, dead last in turnover differential. We've got the Cowboys right where we want them, right? We're going to flip this. We're going to flip the Chicago script because they're looking at us the way we were looking at Chicago. Deservedly.
It's an NFC East game. You never know what's going to happen. We've done it before. I said it last week. I'll continue to say it. We have a hell of a lot better chance of winning on the road than we do at home. I don't know why, but it seems to be true. Dallas has not been beaten at home this year. I didn't realize that. They've beaten the Jets. Now they haven't beaten any really good teams. They've beaten the Jets, the Patriots, the Rams, and the Giants. Not exactly a group of Super Bowl contenders, but they are undefeated at home. They're licking their chops, like Mark said. And we're coming off a short week. Of course, we're coming off a short week against, one of our toughest division rivals, because that's what the NFL always does to us. But I guess you have like a gambler's chance, right? You just know that they certainly can't be taking us very seriously. I'll put it that way and leave it at that. I think that's our best asset coming into this game is I guarantee you, no matter what the coaches say to them, every player on that roster expects to just come in and shellac us and humiliate us. And sometimes that's all it takes for an upset to happen.
Yeah, that's all true, John. But the scary thing when it comes to the Cowboys, unfortunately, this season, and I personally believe that it's the mark and the sign of a pretty solid football team. And I will sadly admit that they are a pretty solid football team. I hate saying that, but it's true. When they play bad teams, they absolutely feast on them this year, and they've slaughtered every single bad team that they've played, with the exception of the Cardinals this year. They beat Carolina by over 20 points. The Giants, I think they outscored them by a total combined 72 points this year. They beat the Rams by 20 plus. They beat the Patriots by over 30. I mean, they do exactly what you want a good football team doing against bad teams. And for me personally, that's really, really concerning given where our team is at. I don't know. I don't know if I want to watch in some
The
ways.
division game. Look what we did against Philly twice. We almost beat Philly twice, and Philly's better than Dallas. I'm just saying it's not an impossibility. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, I don't think it's ever an impossibility. How many times? And if you look at our Thanksgiving record against Dallas of recent note, it's not like they take us to the woodshed every Thanksgiving. We have had Antonio Gibson had his best day of his career against Dallas on Thanksgiving Day. I mean that was 2020. It feels like forever ago, but it wasn't that long ago when in the grand scheme of things. So I think we can make a game of it. I think any given Sunday, too many times people forget that. And we forgot about it. Coming into the game against the Giants. Any weekend, any team can beat anybody. And I honestly think that roster wise, I do think we're better than what we have shown. And you wonder if when it can show up in flashes. And this would be an opportune time to beat our rival. It's give us something to put, feather in somebody's cap for the year.
Looks like according to SI.com, we are 2-8 in Dallas on Thanksgiving.
But I said recent.
That's the last 10 matchups. Yeah. The last time we beat them was in 2020, 41-16. Montez Sweat finished it off with that deflected pass and touchdown.
I think Dak Prescott is underrated this season. He's really having a great season. He's had some like nationally televised games where he didn't play very well. And but when you look at his statistics, I mean, he's completing like 70% of his passes, 19 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's only been sacked 22 times. That's like a 2-week stretch for us. Or 3-week stretch maybe, but anyway, he's playing well. And I mean, I don't know that we need to go through all the playmakers they have. Pollard is not having a great season for some reason. But their receivers are scary. Their defense is better than their offense, which is the really scary part to me. I mean, they're second overall in yards limited on defense, 5th in scoring. They're not as quite as good against the rush. So my suggestion would be that Eric Bieniemy get over it and pound the rock. First of all, to keep the ball out of their hands, and second of all, because they have a lot more vulnerability on the ground than they do through the air. But I don't think Eric Bieniemy is capable of doing that. I haven't seen it yet.
We saw it in flashes. This past week, didn't we see it in flashes? I think there was one drive that we had 10. It was like a 12-pay drive, but in 8 or 9 of them were rushing plays, and they were averaging between 5 and 7 yards per carry.
I thought we ran the ball 28 times against the Giants, but I could be wrong.
There were signs of life from the running game. That was the one positive takeaway I had, is we stuck with it. And I still don't think it's a dynamic scheme. I think it's a slow developing scheme, and it doesn't really necessarily fit the running backs we have, but they were able to get some production out of it. And that's been my one complaint about EB, that I thought he has neglected that side of the offense. He's got a great creative passing scheme, and his quarterback is throwing the ball over the field, but the offense has been sadly lacking in the ground game. And I think you really need to have some of both. The great teams have both.
A lot of passing to the backs the last 2 weeks. Like Robinson, I think might have had. I said this last week. I think for 2 weeks in a row, Robinson's had more receptions than he has rushes. Don't quote me on that, but he's had a lot of balls thrown his way, put it that way.
Those are called extended handoffs now.
Yes.
It's an extension of the run game.
Right. So maybe, to be fair, maybe that's how Bieniemy is viewing it, as I'm not handing it off, but I'm getting it to my running backs in space.
Robinson had 17 carries for 73 yards and 7 receptions for 59 more against the Giants. Just to tie a bow on it. But anyways.
No, the Cowboys will be paying attention to him. So we may have to go somewhere else with the ball.
So I know Paul said he's got something he wants to throw it out at the end. Do we even want to do predictions on this game?
I'll make a prediction.
Go ahead, Mark. Predict.
Paul, you want to do your thing before the predictions?
Oh, it's completely up to you guys. I don't care.
Go
Just
ahead,
tell me
Paul.
what to do.
Come on,
We'll
hit me,
do-
man.
we'll
I've
wrap
been
up.
waiting to hear what it is.
All right. I almost feel like we should have done predictions first, because I feel like I know where predictions are going to go, but that's okay. We'll have a positive moment here. So, does anybody know the significance? I'm sure you all do, but what is the significance of November 27th? Because November 27th is actually going to take place before our next podcast. So November 27th is probably one of the saddest days in our team's history. That was Sean Taylor's passing. I thought that we would, and I don't normally wear jerseys on the podcast, but tonight I'm wearing the 21. I thought that maybe it would be a nice time just to reflect maybe on our most cherished or favorite memory of having Sean Taylor wear our colors, because he was arguably the brightest shining star during the Dan Snyder era. So I thought you guys might want to take a stab at that.
Absolutely. I love it.
So I have, go ahead, Derek. I thought you were.
I will never forget the way he made Terrell Owens his bitch on a regular basis. He went out of his way to pester Terrell Owens, regardless of the team he played for. But I loved it even more because you could see he had that extra level of enjoyment when he would just annoy T.O. when he was on the Cowboys. He would finish hits. He had no problem jumping up and, getting in his face and letting him realize that this isn't going to be just another get your popcorn ready game. You're going to have to earn it. And he had no problem. He hated the Cowboys. You could see it in the way that he played.
I think my favorite in-game one, and it's not an easy choice because there were several, but the one that my mind goes to was the end of the Santana Moss game on Monday night in Dallas when we got the two touchdowns and had the lead, but there was still over a minute and a half left, and Dallas has the ball, and there was a pass that I think would have converted a first down near midfield that would have given Dallas a really good field position to go down and potentially win that game.
Aaron Glenn, right?
Maybe, Derek, I couldn't remember. I thought it was a running back named Harrison, but I could be wrong about that. And Sean the guy catches the ball and turns to try to make a play, and Sean is there and just separates him from the ball and plants him and essentially ends the game, which I was in a very quiet house. My kids were still small. Everyone's in bed, including my ex-wife upstairs. And I am standing on the couch in my living room at 50x years old, silently stomping my feet and throwing my hands around and try not to catch my fingers in the ceiling fan blades.
Creighton.
That was a Sean Taylor moment.
It was Creighton.
Okay, that's it.
Yep.
I can't pick one play, so I'll widen the lens a little bit. I live in South Florida, and I was a huge University of Miami football fan until my son went to FSU. And those teams had a NFL who's who's list of players on them. But through all the years and all those teams, Sean Taylor was by far my favorite Hurricane. And when he was selected by Washington, I was literally out of my mind with glee and happiness and etc. My son was too, and we're jumping up and down. And he brought so much football joy to my life that, for the most part, at least helps to balance the sadness that it ended up. But I'll always treasure Sean.
So it's January 1st, 2006. It's Gibbs' second season, having gone 6-10 the first season. We are in our final game of this season, and we're at Philly. And it was the most miserable. It was the coldest freaking game I've ever been at. And I am on the sidelines taking pictures with another guy because we're helping run the team website. And as the game is winding down and it looks like we're not going to make the playoffs again, even with Joe Gibbs for the second year in a row, Sean Taylor forces a fumble, picks it up, rumbles down the field with my buddy and myself running down the sidelines parallel to him, screaming the entire way. And he does that dive into the end zone. And I will tell you, that's the only time I've ever cried at a football game. It was so emotional because you knew, you know what? We just signed a playoff ticket. And that was the most incredible sports experience of my life.
One more, I've got to do honorable mention. The blocked field goal, pick it up,
Dallas game.
run it back. I was at the game.
I was too.
The entire stadium is screaming, go down, go down, go down. Because there was time on the clock. Sean Taylor ends up getting face mask, returns it back to about the 40-ish, and then the 15-yarder on top of that, and Dallas knew then. And I'll never forget, Novak was kicking, right? From my left to right, and that ball might have only made it might have been one football between, one football length between the football and the goalpost. And Troy Vincent blocked it, and it was one of the wildest endings I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'll never, ever let go of that moment.
If you go back and look at the game broadcast of that field goal from behind, that ball is going
outside, and
it is going right.
Yeah.
And the good football Lord reaches down and just nudges it back in just enough. It was nuts.
It's funny you say that because my seats were 25-yard line to the right of that. And we were all laughing like everybody must have just blown at the right time and started screaming because it shifted the momentum of
it. Shifted it. Something happened.
Just enough to go inside the upright. But that was wild.
Paul, what was yours, brother?
So the highlight for me was what John described, but one that we haven't mentioned this evening was our playoff win in 2006 against Tampa Bay, which I believe may have been the last time we won a playoff game. In that game, you guys will remember that Sean Taylor, I believe in the first quarter, it may have been, had like a 52-yard fumble return for a score. If memory serves me correct, was that not a game where he was also disqualified or ejected?
Was that the spitting game?
Yeah, face, right.
Yeah, but prior to that, he played a huge role in getting this franchise, the last playoff win that we've experienced. And playoff football is what it's all about. And I'll never forget the feeling that I had when we beat the Bucks. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to the divisional round. And you just felt like we were on the verge of potentially doing something special eventually, but it hasn't materialized. But it is what it is. Positive memories nonetheless.
Thanks for that, Paul. That was great.
Yeah. Something we can always, I think all of us can always reflect on some positive memories around that guy.
Yeah.
How do you segue to scores now?
Yeah. Enough with the positivity.
Yeah, let's break our hearts. Well, I'll jump feet in the water. I don't think we're gonna. I think this. All logic would lead me to believe that we're gonna lose this game. So it would be so Redskins for us to win this game. I'll be rooting like hell for us to win this game. I don't think it happens. I think it's gonna be 28-13. I think it's gonna be a little gross. Cowboys win, but I'm wrong. I'll be rooting like hell that I'm wrong.
Well, okay, I'll do it. I see you're ready too, but I think our defense is going to have a really long night in this one. I don't see them holding Dallas. Dallas is averaging like 28.5. We're giving up, by the way, 27 points, just even to teams like the Giants, right? Our average. I think the Cowboys go north of 30. I think they end up with like 34, and Sam keeps us competitive and throws a couple of touchdown passes to make it look interesting. Like I'm seeing 35-20, maybe 35-17, something like that.
So I'm gonna say it's gonna be closer. just because, again, it's a division game and we've shown against our best division opponents that we show up. And I know all the reasons why we may not show up, but just to try to take a slightly less nihilistic view of things, I'm going to call it, I'm going to say that Dallas gets up on us early because I think they will, because they can, and we don't have any way to stop them. So I could see them being up like 21-0, but we're going to come roaring back in the second half, and we'll get as close as the final score, which is 38-35.
Mm.
That'd be fun.
I'm not going to give much detail. I'm just going to say 41-20 Dallas, and Joey Sly is going to miss another extra point.
34-16 Dallas.
So everybody and their mother's picking Dallas, which means that, like I said, this would be the most Redskins thing ever to win this game.
Well, at some point, it's the head over the heart, right? I mean, they're a far better team than we are, and they're playing well, and we are not even playing particularly well. We were earlier in the year. I would like to have seen this game when we were 4-4, and the team still felt like it was in the running to maybe do something this year. I just don't know what that locker room's like at this point. So tough order for them. I hope they stand up.
Well, fellas, it's been a pleasure to therapeutic, I should say. I shouldn't say pleasure. It's been therapeutic to reminisce with you guys, and we only have about what, 19 hours, 18 hours before we got to start kicking the door down, unlike most times when we're recording a podcast and we're 3 days ahead of it. So it's been fun. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And to everybody's family and us at BGO. I think I can speak for everybody and say that we all do view each other as family. So happy Thanksgiving, and
keep a candle burning.
That's right, buddy. And we'll be in BGO game chat at some point tomorrow. So come by, join us, and hopefully don't share in our misery. All right, boys.
Good night.
All right.